The reign of the great Queen Cleopatra is chronologically closer to us than it is to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Let that sink in for a moment. But that is not all. The pyramids harness their intrigue from the mystery of their construction. Who constructed them? How were they so precise and efficient? While it is easy to claim that the aliens did it, one cannot help but think of that old counter-argument. Just because white people didn't make it doesn't mean it's the work of supernatural beings. It feels inappropriate in some ways that the Hellenistic civilization lays claim to at least 4 of the 7 traditional wonders of the ancient world. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was erected under the Ptolemaic dynasty, and the mausoleum at Halicarnassus also had Greek architects. Many people have critiqued the list for its restricted Hellenistic scope, and rightly so. Don't get me wrong, the ancient Hellenistic society was one of the greatest civilizations in history, but that doesn't have any bearing on the argument of merit. In this case, merit brings diversity, not the other way around. Anyhow, we kick the list off with the oldest and the only monument that is not destroyed beyond belief. To utter the oft-quoted phrase, "It has stood the test of time," let's delve into the good old Great Pyramid of Giza. It might interest you to know that there are 2 other pyramids near the famous one, fully integrated within massive complexes containing temples and palaces. And no, none of these things were constructed by aliens or slaves. Ancient Egyptian history is often divided into the early dynastic, old, middle, new, and late periods. All these periods correspond to different social, political, and cultural milestones. But it is the Old Kingdom that concerns us for now. What happened during the Old Kingdom, you ask? Grand edifices were put up to last an eternity, to fashion an antidote to time itself, to immortalize the futility of man against the charging tides of nature, to claim a part of life for oneself, to cheat death as much as one can. All these efforts were not in vain, for the monument has lasted an eternity. If one goes back in time, the Egyptians built similar monuments even before the pyramids. We are, of course, talking about the mastabas, which were royal tombs of similar shape. Well, except for the top part, which is flat since the tilted walls don't converge at the top. Mastabas were built during the early dynastic period. During the Old Kingdom, the practice evolved, and pyramids replaced mastabas as the burial chambers of great emperors. It took a long time to perfect the architectural form. Ideas coalesced over centuries to manifest the grandeur and mystique of the Great Pyramid. When Imhotep, the architect under Pharaoh Joses of the 3rd dynasty from the 28th century BCE, constructed the first pyramid, it was pretty different from the ones we're used to seeing. He pancaked 6 mastabas on top of one another so that the pyramid had distinct levels with connecting stairs. The Pyramid of Djoser still stands at Saqqara, a whopping 48 centuries later. During the reign of Pharaoh Snefru of the 4th dynasty, we witness a transition from step pyramids to smooth-sided pyramids. How do we witness the transition, you may ask? Ladies and gents, we present the bent pyramid at Dashur, its incline decrease as it moves up. The idea is there. The execution isn't yet. Some scholars have theorized that Snefru's ambitions may have been laid bare, quite literally, on another pyramid construction site, forcing his architects to stabilize this one. And then we arrive at our wondrous monument at Giza. Erected by Snefru's son, Khufu, it continues to enthrall and amaze us with its proportions, astronomical alignment, architecture, the mystery of its construction, and resilience. For starters, it seems mind-boggling that this rugged structure has withstood the pangs of the scorching heat, the billowing winds, and the vast desert surrounding it for around 4,500 years. Pharaoh Khufu commenced work on the first pyramid around 2550 BCE, and while there are plenty of pyramids, around 130 in Egypt, and many more in Sudan, the Great Pyramid of Khufu is the tallest. Khufu moved away from his father's pyramid and moved northward onto higher ground. Historians debate the possible reasons for this move. The most common theories include a lack of building space around his predecessor's tomb and the loosened ground there. The choice of higher ground ensured that Snefru's pyramid was still visible. One would imagine that he envied the ambition of his predecessor's monuments, because Khufu's project was ambitious, if nothing else. And the aspiration can be felt in the name Akhet Khufu, or the Horizon of Khufu. Speaking of horizons, it is crucial to notice that the Pyramid of Giza is the only 8-sided pyramid. Its seemingly 4 sides are precisely indented in a concave fashion. If the name doesn't sell you on the majesty, just look at the freaking thing. Its base measurement is 230 meters by 230 meters, which means that each side of the pyramid is close to a quarter kilometer. The base is around 13 acres, and if you decide to move around it, you would walk close to a kilometer, 920 meters to be exact. As to why you would endeavor to do it, I have no clue, but the hypothetical is there. The pyramid has a height of 138 meters, so if you try to climb it, let's stop this. By the way, people have climbed it and stolen limestone casting from the pyramidion or the top. Had they stolen some more, we might just have had a great mastaba at Giza. The pyramid's original height was closer to 148 meters. The entrance lies on the north. Upon entering, there are 3 chambers: the king's burial chamber, the statue chamber, and the underworld chamber. The king rests in his chamber. The statue chamber might have contained the car of Khufu, more on that in just a minute, and the underground chamber is incomplete. Archaeological research indicates that the underworld chamber was the oldest of the lot. Why was it abandoned? Your guess is as good as mine. The Khufu pyramid's sides ascend at an angle of 51 degrees. The stone blocks weigh almost 2.5 tons apiece, and there are nearly 2.3 million granite and limestone blocks, or at least there used to be before stone thieves ransacked parts of the monument. That makes a total of around 6 million tons. So how were all those stones pushed into place? More importantly, how was it constructed? And therein lies the fascination with the edifice. Even today, scientists are not sure how it was built. We know that it was not built by slaves, since there are records of the workers being well fed and fairly paid. They were skilled workers, well organized, and aptly provided with the greatest resources by the pharaonic authority. But that still does not solve the mystery of their building techniques and architectural vision. What is even more astonishing is how it encodes astronomical values and the planet's geometric proportions in its measurements. It is aligned within the 360th degree of the true north, also known as the astronomical north. The pyramid's perimeter is 365.2 for cubits. Seem familiar? And when you divide that by twice the pyramid's height, you get the value of pi. But pi defines the relationship between a circle's radius and circumference, does it not? You are right, esteemed lady or gentleman. Prepare to get your mind blown again. The pyramid's height has the same relationship with its base's perimeter as a circle's radius has to its circumference. Not only that, twice the perimeter times 10 raised to the power of 8 equals the sun's mean radius. If you multiply the perimeter by 10 raised to the power of 9, you get the average distance to the sun. But it does not stop there. If you take the pyramid's weight, which is 5,955,000 tons, and multiply that by 10 raised to the power of 8, you get the Earth's mass. There's far too much precision here to banish it all to the realm of coincidences, and we have not even listed half of these mathematical details here. But the pyramid itself is not the only thing in the valley, is it? There is an entire complex feeding off the mountain of stone. Past the enclosure wall, we have cemeteries to the east and the west. Beyond the cemetery on the east, we reach the mortuary temple, which has not passed the test of time. Only its foundation remains. To the south of the pyramid, there are a few mastabas, and beyond that, we see more pyramids. One pyramid were built for Khafra, and one for his successor, Menkaura. Khafra's pyramid is the second largest, and Menkaura's pyramid is considerably smaller than Khufu and Khafra's tombs. But if we move to the Great Pyramid's southeast, we arrive at the iconic Sphinx. The Great Sphinx was built by Khufu's successor, Khafra, to represent the sun god, the protective spirit that guards Khufu's tomb, or at least that is the running consensus. An architectural feat it is, and a ridiculously impressive one at that. But what prompted the need for such a large monument? And what fueled the creative impulses, the desire, and the vision to undertake such an awe-inspiring task? Ancient Egyptian society was profoundly religious and employed rigid hierarchies. One could almost see the pyramids as visual representations of these ideas. It starts with a gigantic base and continues to contract as it moves up. The Sphinx also materializes the zoolatry commonly associated with ancient Egypt. Herodotus tells an anecdotal story in his seminal work, Histories, of the Achaemenids marching against the Egyptians with a front line of cats. The Egyptians, who held the animal sacred, were overwhelmed by the moment and lost the battle. The integrity of that story is fodder for another time and another tale. However, it does lead us to the common beliefs of ancient Egyptian society. The Egyptians believed death to be a phase, a path that led to the afterlife. Creating tombs and mummifying their bodies was their way of ensuring safe passage to the next life. The tombs were often filled with food, domestic tools, and other things to provide comfort in the afterlife. Discovered tombs also contain Ka statues to hold the Ka or the pharaoh's spirit after it leaves his body. The Ka was created as a close but slightly idealized resemblance of the emperor so that the soul would have an easy time recognizing the new body. In a lopsided society with absolute pharaonic authority at the top, the Egyptian nobles could, for the most part, do as they well pleased, and elaborate burials and magnificent monuments were their way of enforcing their will on the people. As for the central mystery of how the pyramids were built, let's hear what Herodotus says on the subject. Ancient historians, with their poetic flourishes, are often not the most accurate sources. Also, keep in mind that Herodotus is narrating these events in the 5th century BCE, a good 23 centuries after the fact, but his 25 centuries old account is still closer to the wonder's inception than we can ever be. This pyramid was made like stairs, which some call steps and others tiers. When this, its first form, was completed, the workmen used short wooden logs as levers to raise the rest of the stones. They heaved up the blocks from the ground onto the first tier of steps. When the stone had been raised, it was set on another lever that stood on the first tier, and the lever again used to lift it from this tier to the next. It may be that there was a new lever on each tier of steps, or perhaps there was only one lever, quite portable, which they carried up to each tier in turn. I leave this uncertain, as both possibilities were mentioned, but this is certain, that the upper part of the pyramid was finished off first, then the next below it, and last of all the base and the lowest part. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any topics you want us to cover next, let us know in the comments. For now, we bid you adieu.